This One's Wife, as ever fails, pivot to acting. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Regular viewers of my work knows my preference for people to go to the evidence to make a determination. This is hugely important when you're dealing with the narcissist, because it aids you in ensuring that you make logical decisions based upon that evidence, that you are not driven by emotional thinking, or it affects you to a lesser degree. It assists you with regard to prospective court action that you might have to take with the narcissist, and it helps you preserve your sanity by going again and again to the evidence rather than being led by speculation, rumour and supposition. This is also something that's applicable with regard to This One's Wife, and as you know, from time to time I will highlight instances whereby someone is engaged in some billy bullshit behaviour, spinning a load of bollocks about This One's Wife. There are plenty of things that she actually does, which are evidence that one can criticise. It isn't necessary to make things up, and as I've explained before, all that simply does is play into This One's Wife's hands. Just recently, This One's Wife has pivoted again. We've seen her do this on numerous occasions. She tries something, it doesn't work. She goes to something else, it doesn't work. She goes to something else, it doesn't work. I've explained why she does this. First of all, it's because she has no inherent talent or ability. Couple that with an absence of charisma and that she's unlikable, meaning if she was likable, even if she might not be particularly good at something, people are more likely to be supportive and give her a pass. But she doesn't have that, because other than her deluded supporters, who are in diminishing numbers these days, most people are either not interested in her or positively dislike her. Then factor in her narcissism, which basically, as long as it gets what it requires, the prime aims, it's not bothered about her actually completing anything. Accordingly, if she can control people by making an announcement, draw fuel from that announcement, manage her facade from that announcement, there's no need to actually deliver on the content of that announcement, particularly where delivery is beyond her or is difficult. The narcissism simply says, there's no point putting the effort in. You can get what we need by just talking about it or undertaking the preliminary stages. There's no need to see it through. And where something does become difficult, then it means that there's an increased chance of her pivoting to something else as she flounders around trying to switch on the light switch of success, although she doesn't realise that the bulbs have all been stolen. We have another example of this, which combines the utilisation of evidence, which then demonstrates why she has now pivoted towards acting. With acting, we know that it's something that she's done previously, although she's not particularly good at it. It was her profession. Therefore, it's natural for her to gravitate towards it. Even though she had in the past said she was done with it, the fact is that for a narcissist, nothing is ever done because of the conditional asterisks. Want to know what that is? Watch the video, The Narcissist Conditional Asterisks. You'll find it insightful. But what's driven this pivot to acting? Well, there are some that suggest it's because the money is running out and this is another desperate attempt to find an alternative form of income, which could be correct. It's also likely to be the case that she's grown bored of As Ever because it's not meeting with the success that it has. Now reduced to claiming that an upstairs room that's out of the way at Godmother's bookstore is a brick and mortar event for her shitty range, and the fact that her products are regularly derided, establishing herself as a titan of the lifestyle brand has proven far more difficult than her deluded mind envisaged. But now we have the provision of some further evidence which demonstrates that As Ever is failing, and this is what is behind the pivot towards acting. A contributor who goes by the name of Snap Pop Crackle, who writes on the subreddit Saint This One's Wife, as you know, they use her full name, I do not, has provided statistical evidence, and it's always appropriate to provide credit to that individual. The provision of this statistical information allows us to understand that As Ever is failing. It's not going upwards, it's going downwards. Let's dive into some of the figures to look at that evidence, not speculation, not supposition, not idle gossip, but actual evidence which demonstrates why the narcissist that is this one's wife is pivoting away from As Ever and turning to yet another rebrand, this time as an actress. The October data has just been provided, and as reported by Snap Pop Crackle, the individual has access to the statistical information associated with the As Ever site through something called similarweb.com. This reports that in July, the traffic, i.e. the total number of visits, in July it was 342,000. In August, it dropped to 317,000. In September, it dropped again to 240,000. And then we had October, and we have just had, of course, her seasonal drop in relation to the holidays. What were the total visits for October? They've dropped again. 196,831, which means there has been an 18% decline in traffic since September. So steadily, from July, traffic to As Ever hasn't increased, it's gone downwards. Despite all of the efforts of daily publishing on the As Ever Instagram site about people who are purportedly purchasing all of this stuff, it's not encouraging people to purchase it, it's going downwards. Sending out the press packs to the like of Vogue, who actually just utilise it as a strange backdrop to a rather self-absorbed story about relationship breakup, it hasn't worked and driven sales. The bounce rate, so this is the number of people that just go to the front page and no further. That's 31.28%, slightly higher than last month's 30.15%. This means that 1/3 of visits only go to the home page and go no further. These are often bots. The time spent on the site is less than September. In September, it was 1 minute 36 seconds. Now it's 1 minute 21 seconds, which hardly is sufficient time to make a purchase. And one suspects, of course, that many of the visits are even shorter. Remember, that's the average. So where some people are purchasing things, they will push the number up. But for it to remain so low at 1 minute 21 seconds demonstrates there are lots of people that are just looking at it for 10, 20, 30 seconds and moving on. From this information, the percentage of visitors from the United States is just 37%. And therefore, since the United States is the only country that As Ever sells to, i.e. delivers to, 2/3 of the traffic is just people looking with no possible way to purchase. Accordingly, one can extrapolate from that, based upon 37.64% of the total visits, that means there's 74,087 visitors from the United States. Roughly 1/3 of those visitors were bounces, which makes about 50,000 potential buyers. Conversion rates for e-commerce tend to be 2%. So 2% of visitors will actually make a purchase, which means the number of visits that resulted in a purchase would be just 1,000 sales for the month of October. Again, Snap Pop Crackle suggests being generous with regard to the amounts being purchased and suggests that each buyer purchases $100 worth of goods. That would mean that the turnover would be $100,000. And of course, product purchase, because she's not making them herself, she's buying them and white labeling them. And then the staff costs. So therefore, from that 100,000, she's got to meet all of these expenses. The fact is, the amount is going to be rather low. It might be that her profit is what? Let's be generous and call it 25%. So that means in October, her profit from As Ever would be just $25,000. You're not going to be a billionaire at that rate, are you? And as a consequence of that, the statistics, they don't lie. That's the statistical information that has been unearthed in relation to As Ever with regard to the number of visitors, the bounce rates, where they're coming from, with the potential for purchase, and then extrapolating that on the basis of likely conversion rate and amount spent. And I think $100 is generous, so it could be even less. Doesn't look good for this one's wife, does it? That's not going to bring her the financial success that she craves, and which is a residual benefit. And therefore it's little wonder that she has now pivoted to acting. I wouldn't be surprised if As Ever disappears in the new year, as a consequence of the fact that it's not going to be making her any money, and even more so if she starts to get some kind of toehold within the acting world. How long do you think As Ever will last, valuable viewers? Do you think it'll still be around at Christmas, New Year, Easter, next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. But what is clear, based upon the evidence, As Ever is failing, and it's little wonder that she's now trying to sniff out an alternative opportunity. The pressure increases on the Duchess of Industrial Beige. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.